I earlier indicated that we can change the type of chart in the marks area, so we can change this to bar chart, for example, or a line chart. And so while kind of the two workhorses, bar and line charts, are in here, and some of the other more common ones are also in here, there's another area that gives us even more options, and that's up here on the top right here. It says show me. And show me here, you can select many other types of different charts. Some of them are not available. So for example, here I can't do maps because my data in my graph right now has no latitude or longitude data. I do have latitude and longitude data generated for me, so I could drag these into here and then create a map. But that option won't be available until I add a latitude or longitude onto my visualization. And that's also indicated at the bottom right there. If I hover over, it's telling me what do I need to be able to create that type of graph. A specific type of graph I like is this dual combination. It allows us to add two measures onto one visualization. Each measure has its own axis. So let me go ahead and show that by creating a new worksheet. And say I want to compare purchases to sales. And I want to look at these over time. So I'm going to do transaction date, and then I'm going to pull this one down. I want to do this monthly, but this is kind of difficult to compare because they're kind of far away from each other. They're in two different panels, so I can click dual axis here and get them into the same panel. Right now one is a bar graph and one is a line, which might be fine, but say I want both to be line chart. I can either select the one I want to change specifically to something else and change that to line, or I can define what all of them should be. So I can see that all of them should be lines. A lot of times it makes sense to have two different axes like this with different ranges, but sometimes that can be confusing for viewers. So it might be that I want to change this to be consistent for both these axes, and to do that I can simply right click and say synchronize axis. So now that I can look for purchases, I can go over to purchases and get the correct value. I can also do that for sales and get the correct value. If I did not synchronize the axis, I would have to, for sales, I would have to go to the right here on this axis, and that's not something we do intuitively, so it makes it a little bit difficult for people to read it. So I would not synchronize the axis only if it's very important that the lines are even closer to each other. Of course, if I want them to be very close to each other, I could do some other calculation on this. I can, for example, show changes from the first period of the data set. And I will discuss later how to create such calculations. It's fairly easy, but I'll save that for a different tutorial. But here I think these are close enough right now the way they are, so I'm going to keep them this way. If they're synchronized, I might as well just get rid of this axis. So I'm going to right click this axis and deselect show header. And now I don't want this to say purchases. That now becomes kind of confusing. And since I know that this is sales and purchases, I could probably get rid of that altogether and remove the title, just like that. And now to know that this is sales and this is purchases, I have to look over here to understand that. To make that a little bit easier, what I can do actually is I can drag measure names right here onto labels, and that will automatically label these lines. And I'm going to click all, so I get the measure names labels for both of them. If I only wanted one of them, of course I would click purchases here, drag measure names onto label, and then only purchases would have it. And let's see, I don't like how that's overlapping, so I'm going to move that one a little bit. But now that's quite a bit easier to see that this is purchases and this is sales. I also want to probably hide this one because I don't need that information anymore. It's because I have that inside the graph instead. And then month of TR transaction date, that's kind of clumsy looking. I don't quite like that. It's informative in that it tells me that these are monthlies, but perhaps I can just change this to say month of transaction, or I just don't have anything here and I change the tick marks. Say I fix that maybe on quarters instead. See what that looks like. One thing I don't like now is these grid lines are a little too strong, so maybe I go ahead and remove those by saying format. So I just right click in there, say format, and then it's lines, and then it's grid lines, and I'm going to say none. As you can tell, there's a lot of different choices in here that you can use for formatting or visualization.